In this video, I'm going to help you determine the total amount of money that you are going to need for retiring comfortably. And the way we're going to figure out what this amount of money is by using something called the 4% rule. So in this video, I'm going to discuss what the 4% rule is. I'm going to give you an example of how it works. And then I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that it accounts for and some of the things that it doesn't account for. So to begin, the 4% rule states that you should not take more than 4% of what the lump sum amount of money is that you start with during your retirement. So as an example, let's say you start off your retirement with $1 million. Okay, so you are in the $1 million club. And you're going to use the 4% rule to help you determine how much money you can take out every year without running out of money before the end of your retirement. All we have to do is multiply 4% by $1 million. And 4% of a million is $40,000. So that is the amount of money that we are allowed to withdraw every single year now in our retirement. This is something that we need to make sure we understand correctly. Is the 4% rule isn't based off of the entire principal at any given point in retirement. It is based off of the amount that you have at the very beginning of retirement. So if you are 15 years into your retirement and you only have $500,000 left, you wouldn't multiply 4% by 500,000 to get $20,000 that you're allowed to withdraw. No, it's 4% times a million. Now that we have a good grasp on how the 4% rule works, I want to just bring you through the whole process of getting to $1 million or however much that you are going to need for your retirement. So let's say that you need $100,000 every single year in gross income to live comfortably during your working years, okay? And you happen to watch my video on how to calculate your wage replacement ratio. And you figure out that you have a wage replacement ratio of 75%, which means that for retirement, you're not going to need $100,000 every year to live comfortably. You're only going to need 75% of that, which is $75,000. Okay? And you're going to have to figure out how to come up with $75,000 to live off of during your retirement. And one of the main sources of income and stable sources of income that you are going to have is Social Security. So let's say you are married, you have a spouse, and or maybe you're just by yourself, but either way, you're getting $35,000 every year in Social Security. And since you're getting $35,000 a year in Social Security, you are not going to need to provide the full $75,000. Instead, you're going to need to provide $40,000. Super simple. And now you see where I'm going with this. For whatever amount that you get for your situation, you have to multiply it by 25 to get the lump sum that you are going to need for your retirement. Now that you have a solid grasp on how the 4% rule works, I wanted to talk to you about time value money, because if you are planning for your retirement right now, then the numbers that you are going to use are going to have to be inflated for the amount that they're going to be in the future. Now I'm going to do a quick time value money calculation to show you how much $40,000 is going to turn into after 20 years because of a 2% inflation rate. So if I just punch in these numbers really quick, it shows me that you will need to retire off of $59,437 starting at year one of retirement. Then you'll have to adjust this for inflation every single year after, because eventually you won't be able to afford your lifestyle because of inflation if you stay at this number, okay? So you have to keep adjusting. And the 4% rule accounts for that. Now, all you have to do to determine the lump sum that you will need by your retirement in 20 years is multiply that $59,437 by 25 to get $1,485,000. Now that I have explained all that, I'm going to switch gears and talk to you about some of the things that the 4% rule accounts for and some of the things that it does not account for. This side is going to be the things that it does account for, and this side is going to be the things that it doesn't account for. And the first thing that the 4% rule accounts for is inflation. So you are going to experience inflation at some point in your life, and it is very rare that there are moments of deflation, but it accounts for 2% inflation every year. And the reason the 4% rule accounts for 2% inflation is because the federal government has a goal at keeping the inflation rate at 2% as long as possible. And the way they do that is they increase interest rates. And so whenever you hear about the federal government increasing interest rates, that's wise. They're trying to keep inflation at 2%, okay? And the 4% rule accounts for this. The second thing that it accounts for is a 30-year retirement. You know your situation. If you feel like your retirement is going to last for more than 30 years, then you should probably reduce the percentage of the 4% rule to maybe 3.5% or something like that, because that's going to take less from your lump sum during your retirement. So you'll just have to use your own discretion with that or seek out some financial advice. Now, the third thing that it does account for is a 50-50 stock and bond split. So this is going to assume that your portfolio is 50% stocks and 50% bonds. And what the 4% rule has done is it has taken into account the average returns that stocks and bonds have given over the past 100 years or so, okay? And it is taking a conservative estimate. It could honestly work as the 5% rule, but we are staying conservative with this because we want to make sure that you don't run out of money for your retirement. That would be awful, okay? Now, some of the things that the 4% rule does not account for is taxes. So if you decide that you need $40,000 every single year to live comfortably, and you need $40,000 of net income, not gross income, because for whatever reason you added up all your expenses for your retirement and you're like, oh, it's $40,000. But it doesn't work that way, because if you are going to withdraw money from a traditional IRA or any sort of retirement account that requires you to take ordinary income, you are going to have to pay tax on that, okay? And so you're going to have to calculate that out for yourself. If you have a Roth IRA, you won't have to pay tax on it, which would be really nice. The next thing that it doesn't account for would be any sort of extra fees that you would pay, maybe an advisor for commissions, or maybe an advisory fee of 1% or whatever it may be. So that's just one other thing that you need to consider. That is all that I have for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you were able to learn something today. I will see you in the next video. Take care.